I will say that was pretty painful. Hitting my face on those guide wires did not feel good. Without exaggeration, you would have had to have been there. I know some of you guys were there. I said Nathan was there. I don't remember who all was there, to be honest, because I didn't remember that kid because I didn't remember very much from that night. But I'm a little bit faster than I look. I know I'm a tall, skinny white guy, but I was moving full speed and it was dark and I didn't even see those things. I mean, there was no slowing down. I was running full speed and I saw them when they were this far away from my face. And I hit those things and my head stayed where the guide wires were and my feet and my legs and my body kept going. So my feet went this way and my head went that way. And no joke, I landed from here to Brad, flipped over and spun around and landed on my hands and knees facing the other way. It was not a fun experience, I will say that. The following week or however long that I had to sleep sitting up because I couldn't lay back because I would choke laying down. And Crystal stayed up at night. I worried her to death because she thought I was going to die in my sleep. I had to sleep sitting up. It was not fun. I did not have a good time. But over time, those things healed, and now I have scars. And I'm going to have these scars on my face for the rest of my life. As long as I'm on this planet, I'm going to have these scars. My nose for the rest of my life is going to be flat. Unless somebody can pay for some plastic surgery or something for me, I'm going to have a flat nose for the rest of my life. It didn't always look like this, I promise. But I'm going to have these horns on the side of my nose and flat. But you know, these scars, they now tell a story. Steele wasn't, you know, he wasn't around then. I said Gavin was. Like I said, Gavin was 5 or 6 years old. He was really young. And it traumatized that poor child because, I mean, all he saw was, I mean, I looked dead. When they come track, because I passed out. And after they drove me back across. So it traumatized him, and I mean, it really did, because we were on a Royal Ranger camping trip not too long after that at Possum Kingdom, and he had stayed back at the cabin, and I remember with me and some other boys, some older boys, who went walking around, and I found an arrow on the ground, and I was just playing. I didn't think anything about it, and I took the arrow and I stuck it up under my arm like this, and I come walking back, and some of the older boys took off running. They're like, "Jeremy, we got attacked by Indians! We got attacked by," I mean, how believable was that, right? "We got attacked by Indians! Jeremy got shot with an arrow!" Gavin is back at the cabin. They couldn't find him. He was freaking out. Going. He was like, I mean, by then he was like 7 or 8 years old. "Somebody's got to get a cell phone. Somebody get a cell phone. I got to call my mama. I got to call my mama. My daddy's hurt again. I got to call my mama. He's going to die. He's going to die. Somebody call my mama. Somebody call my mama. Call my mama." It traumatized him. He was there. He was young, but still, he wasn't there. He wasn't born yet. Our youngest one. And so I remember when Steele was, you know, old enough to talk and walk and all that, and I remember him, you know, climbing up in my lap one time, and you know how kids are, like touching your face and putting their hands in your private space, and you don't want to get, "This is my bubble, stay out my bubble." You know how kids are, and he was all up on me, and he does like this, and he grabs my nose, he's like, "Daddy, what is wrong with your nose?" "Son, it's character." That's what it is. But I told him the story of what happened to my nose. But for the rest of my life, these scars, they tell a story. I'll carry them for the rest of my life. I've got a little scar right here on my thumb. And I will think back, and my kids will probably remember it for as long as they live. And y'all know how toys are, right? It's ridiculous trying to get into a new toy. If you're a parent or a grandparent, y'all, can I get a witness? Y'all know what I'm talking about. You cannot get in them dumb things. So I'm trying to get a toy open. I always got a pocket knife. I whip my knife out. I'm like, "Oh, I'll get this thing open. I'll get it open." I'm pulling. Now, every good Royal Ranger knows you don't never point the blade towards your fingers in your hand, right? So I'm doing like this, and I slipped, and I stuck the point of my knife into my thumb right there. Well, I happened to hit an artery when I did it, so I pulled that out, and it goes. Every time my heart would pump, and I go, "Look, Crystal, this is bad." I tried to get it to stop bleeding. I couldn't get it to stop bleeding. I'm like, "Oh, man, Crystal's going to be mad." She comes in there. She's like, "What'd you do?" I can't get it to stop bleeding. Call my mama. So she did. She called my mom and my dad. They come down. They helped me get that to stop bleeding. But for the rest of my life, I'll have that scar. And every time I look at it, I'll think about almost bleeding to death in my kitchen over a little bitty toy and my knife, sticking my knife into it. My dad has told you, I don't know how many times he's told you, but you know, when we go swimming, my dad doesn't have his shirt on. He's got a scar right here. Anyway, it's right here, big scar. And I know you've heard the story about how God healed him when he was 18 years old. You know, and how the doctors pretty much gave him no hope, said he was going to die. They cut him open and God healed him. But he's got a scar right here. And like I said, you've heard it, I don't know how many times, but imagine my life, how many times I've heard that story, right? I mean, I would say I've heard that story 257 times, give or take. 250 something times, but listen, every time I see that scar from being a child growing up hearing that story, every time I see that scar tells a story. That scar reminds me that my God heals. That scar reminds me that because my God healed, my dad lived, and because he lived, he had me. That's what that scar does. It tells a story. My wife had C-sections with all 3 of our kids. Every time I see that scar tells a story. I think of my oldest son, how I was a 17-year-old kid, scared to death. That's a whole other story to tell another time. 17 years old, she goes into labor. She's in labor for, I don't even know how long. It was like 16, 18, 20 hours. She was in labor for a long time. She pushed for 2 hours, and the doctor said, my mama's in there with me. Of course she's in there. She's having a baby. Her mama's in there. And the doctor says, look, we got to go, we got to do a C-section. He's like, this isn't working, we got to do a C-section. So of course, I've told you this before, all I can think of is I hate country music and I hate that stupid country song, Don't Take the Girl. That's all I can think of, because I don't even know, does the girl die in that song or does she not die? I don't know. But that's all I can think of is that stupid country song. So they take her out of the room and I start boo-hooing. And my mom was like, she goes and gets my daddy and get in there, Jeremy's crying. And I said, it's your turn now. He's in there crying and taking Christopher C-section and blah, 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 blah. But when I see that scar, I think about it. I remember my dad telling me, hey, it's all right. It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. And everything was fine. Besides, Gavin was a 11-pound, 2-ounce, 23-inch long monster. That's why she couldn't have him. I think of that. I think of Jera. Didn't really have any problems with her, but I think of her when I see that scar. And then I think of my little mohawk-wearing monster Steele, our little, whatever you want to call him, but none of our kids were planned. I was going to say the unplanned one. None of them were planned. I told you all that before too. That's how I told my dad we were pregnant the second time. You know how birth control is 99.9% effective? We're the 0.1%, Dad. But I think of Steele because our doctor was a Christian, and he would pray with us in his office. And he said, you guys have had big kids before, and he said, you're having a boy, and their lungs develop slower than girls. He said, but for some reason, I want to do a test and go ahead and take him, even though it's 3 weeks early. He's going to take him 3 weeks early. He said, we're going to do this test. I'm going to go ahead and take him. And we don't know. That's fine with us, whatever. So he does the C-section, and if you've ever been in there while they're doing a C-section before, this is my 3rd one. I should be used to it by then. But again, all I can think of is that stupid country song, Don't Take the Girl. So my nerves are shot already anyway. I get sick in the mornings. We won't go into all that. But anyway, I'm sick. She's fine. She don't care. We go in there for a C-section. When you're in there for a C-section, you sit beside the woman's head, your wife's head. They put this big thing up so you can't see anything. The doctor's down there. There's all these nurses and whatever, 4 or 5 nurses or surgical techs, whatever they are. They're all down there, and they act like you're out to dinner having a conversation while this is all going on. If y'all know what I'm talking about, I mean, it's nothing to them. They're all down there like, oh yeah, well, and they're talking to you, they're talking to each other, they're carrying on this conversation, and it's, well, when we get done with this, how about we head over to Wendy's and grab a triple, whatever, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there going like, don't take the girl. Just get this over with. But they're over there talking, and all of a sudden they just get quiet, all of them. And of course I'm starting to freak out, and the doctor says, do you see that? And the nurses are all, yeah, I see it. And I look at Crystal, and she's looking at me like, don't you lose it. It's okay. It's fine. But the doctor, he said, I was like, oh, is the baby okay? Is everything all right? All I can think is something's wrong with the baby. And he said, everything's going to be okay. He said, the baby's going to be fine. And he took care of it. And the doctor, I was in the hall talking with him, and he said, I want you to know, he said, that your wife and that baby are a miracle. This is a Christian man. He said, I don't know why I wanted to take that baby 3 weeks early. He said, I don't normally do that. He said, but this is a miracle. He said, if she would have went into labor, he said, more than likely your wife and that baby would have died. He said, this is a miracle. He told us we wouldn't be able to have any more kids after that. But he said, this is a miracle that they are alive and that we took this baby when we did, because had she gone into labor, they both would have died. But I think of that every time that I see that scar. I think of that because those scars tell a story. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here. In Christ, listen to me, in Christ, we are a new creation. Those old things pass away. But like I said earlier, we don't have amnesia. We don't just forget about all those things that we've been through. We don't forget about where we came from. We carry scars about where we came from. And those scars now tell a story. Those scars now tell a story of amazing grace. Just like what Brad was talking about with the man that was demon-possessed. When they saw those wounds on his arms, they saw a crazy person. They saw a demon-possessed person. They saw somebody that had no control over his own life. That's what they saw when they saw those wounds where he cut himself. But after he met Jesus and had an encounter with Jesus and he was healed and he had scars on his arms, when he went into those towns and they saw those scars on his arms, those scars, instead of saying, this man's crazy, this man's demon-possessed, this man has no control. With those scars, they told a whole different story. Those scars told a story of amazing grace. And those scars told a story about a man who had an encounter with Jesus Christ. In Christ, we are a new creation. And the scars that we carry tell a story. My dad said this before, but God can take your mess and He can make a ministry out of it. Our scars tell a story.